So we all know that the coronavirus pandemic is here. It's causing massive changes, fundamental changes to our way of life, to our communities, and even to our country. And instead of hammering home what is wrong at the moment, which is quite easy to do, I think we all need to think about ways of making this world a better place. How can we combat some of these fundamental challenges that have arisen in light of the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic? So there are two sociological terms that come to mind when I think about how we can engage in assisting those who are in need of various services. And these two sociological terms are allyship and accompliship. Allyship, or quote, being an ally, which is something many of you have probably already heard of, is an active practice of using one's power and privilege to achieve equity and inclusion while holding ourselves accountable to marginalized people's needs.
My 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not going to be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not going to be fired because I am cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you gotta know when to zippa the lippa. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. Okay. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. I'm back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward.
This is something that is so important to our efforts in combating injustices and inequalities. Each one of us does indeed have privilege. Some of us have more privilege than others. But in this current time of a pandemic, we need to start thinking about how can we use our privilege in a constructive way that is taking care of ourselves, of course, that this is vitally important, but how can we use our own privileges to assist those who are not in the same situation that we are in, that need immediate assistance? Professor Colleen Clemens stated in another article that an ally will mostly engage in activism by standing with an individual or group in a marginalized community. So this is quite similar to what Kim was saying, recognizing your power and your privilege and then using these powers and privileges to assist those who are in need. But Clemens distinguishes allyship with another term. That term is accompliship. While an ally will assist when assistance is needed, an accomplice is already involved. So this is kind of one of the distinguishing features of allyship and accompliceship. An ally might turn things on or get active when a service is needed or when something goes wrong. But an accomplice is already there with the people all the time, consistently. So this is a slight difference between the two terms. An accomplice, according to Clemens, will focus more on dismantling the structures that oppress individuals or groups, and such work will be directed by the stakeholders in the marginalized group. Again, another distinguishing feature between allyship and accompliceship. An accomplice works with the people who are in service and follows their lead, while an ally may not even necessarily have any connections with the individual that is, or communities that they're trying to tie themselves to. So an accomplice lets the people that they're trying to serve lead them in their actions. This is really important. Here is how Dr. Kayla Story differentiates between an ally and an accomplice.
Like, to me, the difference in identifying as an ally versus an accomplice is ally implies adjunct to, adding on, being a part of something already, underway, which is usually connected to people of color, black people namely, a movement, right? Something that has been created by black folk or other people of color. So allies want to work with these groups to, again, amplify the voices of these groups and stuff like that. And so it sounds great, right? But it's not needed. Oftentimes people are offended. Those social justice warriors who are in those groups feel like, wow, you come into our space that we've created for ourselves. Now you're dominating the space. Now you're using your voice, right? You're trying to amplify our voices, but you're literally muting our voices out. And so an accomplice, right, instead of being an add-on or an adjunct to people of color, black people in their movements, accomplices are white, with their white friends, their white family members, and they are talking about social justice, liberation, anti-racism, anti-sexism, right? Anti-transphobia, all of that amongst them, amongst themselves, empowering others in their families, in their communities to think differently about themselves as white folk and to think differently about black folk and people of color and women and all of those things. That's an accomplice. That's someone who is using their voice to undo the things that needed to be undone for them, right? So you're gonna see the accomplice before you even think about, where the white people at? The accomplice is gonna be right there. They're gonna be right front and center, right? Because that's how deeply committed they are.
There's another piece published on autostraddle.com that describes an accomplice in the following manner. Quote, accomplice is, as it sounds, about being complicit in the work or the crime in a criminal justice context. It's about sharing the responsibility and burden of the fight. She continues, I like that accomplice implies the danger of getting caught, or, in other words, taking personal risks, giving up personal power and even personal safety in order to become part of liberating someone else.
And horn-rimmed glasses. Looks a bit like Al Franken being arrested in 1963 on the south side of Chicago in the midst of the civil rights movement. I think that's a picture that's going to speak 1,000 words.
An accomplice doesn't just stand with or even just speak out. And here's the key feature. They do, they act, they decenter themselves, and they do so actively. Accomplices see the work of solidarity as a verb, not a noun. And this is really important too. We see this kind of play out in conversations even with this process of allyship. Someone may say, I'm an ally of this community or that community, and they may put this up even on, their social media page in their bio. But we need to think about not only allyship, but also accompliceship as a process. It's not an identity label. It's not something that you put in your social media account. It's a process, and ideally it's a selfless process. So there are slight differences between these two terms, allyship and accompliceship. I suggest you further your reading and engaging in a simple Google search, ideally with some academic pieces of literature, to continue differentiating these two terms And we need to think about how these two terms relate, of course, to what is unfolding around us with this current pandemic. So I do have some questions for you to consider, and you can leave your answers or comments in the section below, or you can DM me personally. So one question: how can you be an ally in light of combating coronavirus? And a second question: how can you be an accomplice in light of combating coronavirus? Again, these two questions are forcing us to differentiate between these two terms. A third question: what are the roadblocks that keep your good intentions from becoming actions during these challenging times? In essence, what can be done? And then lastly, who has been a good ally and or an accomplice to you in your own life, and how have they done so? And as you can imagine, the last question: who have you been a good ally and or an accomplice to in your own life? And what did you do to engage in these matters? So there you have it. The coronavirus pandemic is a massive challenge, unlike anything we've ever seen. But we need to not only stay positive, but we need to stay positive in a manner that pushes us to think critically of how to stay engaged, how to assist those who are most in need, and how to really make better sense of how we are all linked and how our common humanity really does supersede any other tribal identity like religion or ethnicity or culture or race. There you have it. I'm hoping that we have a good day today and hopefully a good week. Thank you.